Hey, Bible read-along readers of the New Testament. Welcome to week 8. This has been nearly 2 months now as you go into this week. And in this week, we're going to be continuing the story of Jesus in the Gospel of Mark. Now, this week is going to feel familiar with very, very few exceptions. All of the material that you'll be reading this week, you've already read in Matthew, but Mark has a little bit different slant on it. Now, we might ask ourselves, why is there so much repetition in the storytelling in the New Testament? Why do we have 4 Gospels? Well, first of all, perhaps because this is the foundational material. It's so important. The story needs to be told more than once and from more than one vantage, not contradictory perspectives, but complementary perspectives that show us more of who Jesus is. These Gospels do have varying emphases. Now, we call the first 3 Gospels synoptic Gospels because they're so familiar, or so similar, I should say, in wording. The 4th Gospel, the Gospel of John, is not the same, though there's still a considerable overlap in the kinds of things that it narrates about Jesus. But even with those synoptic Gospels, with their very close similarities, there are varying emphases. Mark, in particular, emphasizes things that we'd find in the other Gospels, but puts special weight on them. He emphasizes Jesus' confrontation with his opponents, the disciples' failure despite their loyalty to Jesus, and all of that in contrast to insignificant people in the story who are in deep need and who show great faith. And in all of this, we're seeing the power of Jesus and also Jesus, the lowly servant who's going to willingly go to the cross and take the sins of the world upon himself. And so all of this in Mark, these kind of emphases are actually made more potent because compared to Matthew, for example, Mark has very little teaching material. There is teaching material, and you'll see some of it in this week's readings. But and of course, Jesus is teaching all the time when he's performing miracles and interacting in other ways. But we don't have as many extended discourses as we did in Matthew, so that concentrates the action and puts an emphasis on what's happening. So in chapters 2 to 6 that you'll be reading this week, you're going to see a succession of 5 stories of conflict, how this has to do with Jesus' actions, how he will assert his authority, the authority as one who has the authority of God himself as he claims to forgive sins, as he says that he has power to decide what can and can't be done on the Sabbath that God has instituted. And that opposition and conflict is going to lead to a deadly plot against him, but it's going to be chapters before anything happens of that. Really, we see in that how God is protecting Jesus and Jesus is moving forward. We'll see him call the 12 disciples, and in doing that, he's making a claim in his time to say, I'm reconstituting the scattered people of Israel. We'll see conflict even between Jesus and his mother. He only has one mother, but he has multiple brothers, and he's in conflict with them. And this is conflict which will be resolved later after his resurrection. But during his ministry, his mother and brothers aren't quite sure what's going on with this guy. We'll see him telling parables, which he will use to explain to his followers the conflict that they're experiencing and to assure them that God will bring his kingdom despite all of this rejection that they're seeing. We'll see the disciples in the middle of a storm with Jesus failing in their faith, even as Jesus calms the storm in a way that only God can do. We'll see Jesus cast a seemingly impossible demon out of a person, bringing cleansing to an area that was thought to be unclean. Not unclean as people thought because it was corrupted by pagan influences, but unclean because Satan was present. That's where the real problem lies. We'll see Jesus dealing with a dead girl, giving her life, and giving life and healing to a sick woman. Those stories will be put together in a way that we'll see those 2 women in 2 different situations put together and see Jesus' blessing for them. We'll see him in his hometown being rejected again. A lot of rejection. Jesus will send out the 12 to declare the coming of God's kingdom and warn them, you're going to be what? Yeah, rejected. There's going to be opposition. And if there's not enough rejection, the week's readings are going to end with the story of John the Baptist and how he's going to be put to death by the wicked Herod Antipas, as so many prophets, Jesus will say, have been. All right, well, happy reading with some texts of the Bible that remind us not everything about Jesus' ministry was happy, but we see the power and glory of Jesus in all of this.